Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about my Explosive Arrow Ballista Leaguestarter guide for patch 3.26. Now, back in patch 3.17 and 3.18, I league started EA Ballista, and that was the first build I've ever league started twice in a row. I absolutely loved it. And ever since then, the game changed slowly but surely. Some of the endgame content got harder and harder, and Explosive Arrow Ballista is a build that very much belongs in the early game and mid game. In end game, there are some options. We're going to talk about that throughout the video, but this is really a cozy league starter that focuses on you having a really good time in the first week. But it didn't get a coat of paint in a while, and I haven't really made any updates. Obviously updated my Maxroll guide, but now I have actually something to make a video about, which I'm very happy, which is the Elementalist rework. We now have the new Golem rework giving us an insane early and mid game power spike that I can only imagine how it's going to feel. It fills in a lot of gaps that have been left by other skills basically getting buffed, while EA has been basically stale for the last 2 years. But yeah, all of that we're going to talk about in this video. Timestamps are up here. It's probably going to be a little bit longer because I'm going to cram it all into one. There will also be a Maxroll guide about this. Either it's already linked down below. I'm most likely also going to pin it, but if not, just wait, it takes a little bit of time. Some disclaimers right at the start. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to start EA Ballista myself. It is currently my comfy pick, my fallback pick. If I have nothing else to play, I would love to basically experience the new Elementalist rework. But either way, I have to put out this video because the build changed so drastically and there's actually interesting stuff to do now. So if you're somebody who's just along for the ride, then maybe wait a day or two and see if I put out another video. But otherwise, yeah, this video will always be there. Now, it's also really hard to test the new endgame power level. Like, how does EA fare up against the new bosses? Like, we don't really know the mechanics, right? So I'm not really sure. Are the golems gonna die? Are they gonna have 70% uptime, 90% uptime? I simply do not know. I did some level testing with like trying to fake the new AoE, trying to fake the new region and whatnot. It is all kind of like mumbo jumbo, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at. All I can say is the power level of EA will be quite different than last league. That is all I know. And also at the end, not everybody likes totems. So totem playstyle, right, where you run around, you put down these totems and they shoot at enemies. It's not everybody's jam. They sometimes die. You have to replace them, right? But mostly people look forward to just having a very cozy time. You plop down the totems and you can avoid boss mechanics. Then let's talk about pros and cons. The pros is this is a very new player-friendly playstyle in terms of, well, as I just said, you can dodge boss mechanics. You can learn bosses very easily, because your damage is always up, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I have to cast, run out of it, and then do no damage for like 2 seconds while I do the mechanic. No, the ballistas just keep firing. Then also great damage uptime versus bosses. This feeds into a lot of things. A 4 million DPS POB on a ballista build is more akin to like an 8 million on a lot of these other builds. For example, if you have to be very melee and you're just walking out of enemies all the time, you're not really doing damage, right? That doesn't really happen on ballistas, at least if you build them correctly. There's also some crazy early game potential with elementalists. Obviously, there's a lot of discussions about, are they going to die in tier 17s? Are they going to die in juiced maps to chaos damage or whatever? But early game, I've talked to a lot of people who played golems before. Early and mid game, they are safe. They're going to be an absolute powerhouse. Just wait for the golem section where we're going to go over everything we'll get. And then the gearing is pretty easy. This level 9 bow right here lets you unlock everything on the Atlas, including Feared. And there are no mandatory uniques, which means it's a very solo self-friendly playstyle. And you can also later make this into a ZHP bosser if you really choose to. But in general, this build is more of a early game kind of jump into a more expensive reroll. Now, cons are delayed damage. While you do have prolift, which is very nice for clear, if you can see right here, there is a short period where it has to explode. And some people really do not like that. This is especially true if you're somebody who has to loot everything, right? Like, if it only happens here or there and you have to backtrack a little bit, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're picking up every wisdom scroll, it's going to be a big deal. And another thing is this build falls off pretty damn hard in juiced content and tier 17s. Basically everything where the ballista playstyle is not enough anymore. Things jump at you with like 100% increased attack speed. You're going to get absolutely one-tapped in some of these tier 17 layouts just because they're so narrow and you can't really go anywhere. This is where other builds put in hundreds and hundreds of divines, but you can't really buy your way out of that like some other archetypes can. Now, the last con is that the build is quite squishy. Now, yes, it did get buffed and it will get a little bit better, but do remember that ever since EA got introduced in 3.17, 3.18, the game also got harder progressively. So if whatever back then was too squishy for you, it's also the same. A lot of of squishiness comes from you misplaying the character though and not positioning correctly. It's not that hard, but I will go over it in the playstyle section. But in general, if you want a more tanky option that does quite a bit less damage, you can also check out Zizaran's champion version. I'll also link it down below in the description. Especially if you're in hardcore, I would personally not recommend the Elementalist version. But what content is it actually good at? The first one is Expedition. This is what most people are farming in week 1. On this build, basically you have the Ignite proliferation. When one enemy dies, it plops over, and it is just absolutely perfect. It is also static, so it doesn't matter that it's delayed damage at all, because everything's kind of happening, and that is kind of a theme here. Everything where you are always in motion, right? Where enemies are running away from you, or where it's super timed, right? Where you have to backtrack. You're not as good at those, but everything that's a little bit more static, like Essences, Ritual, Blight, Betrayal, Harby, Deli, right? Because of the prolif and what is just extremely, extremely strong. Same with Abysses, and honestly, from what I've seen from Mercenaries, I honestly think Ballistas are going to be very good, because if you're melee and they're repositioning all the time, it really seems like they're moving a lot, then this build should be quite good, because the Ballistas are just going to follow it, and it literally doesn't matter. And yeah, mid or bad, everything that has to be super fast. Now, Legions, you would think it's really good because of the prolif, but in general, it's a little bit too delayed, just a tiny bit too delayed for it to be super efficient. Wanders, bow builds are way better at that. Breaches are okay, I would say mid, not really bad. Juice tier 17s, it's very bad at. The layouts are bad, the defenses are not good enough. Now you can do your tier 17s, just to be clear. You can do a easy tier 17 to unlock any day, but if you want to farm really hard tier 17s or rough strats, it's just not the build for you. It's just not going to do that. And also, meat sacks are back, if you know what that means. If you don't, then yeah, it doesn't really matter, but there's like certain strats where enemies are just so tanky that you just need a few 100 million DPS, and a dot build is just not going to do there because it has dot cap. And then also Simulacrum, because it's all very, I don't know, like you're kind of like in a small spot and you're just getting jumped at, and once again, you're not tanky enough for that. Let's go over Explosive Arrow, your main skill. This is a bow attack, AoE, fire, yada 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 skill that deals a lot of damage. How does that work? So you start firing single arrows, right? If you self-casted it yourself, and you have a certain time frame in which you can stick more and more arrows in. And with quality, you can stick up to 22 arrows in the enemy. After the time is up, which is 1 second, you will see a big boom, which is then igniting enemies and spreading across the screen. You can see right here the boom. Here you can see it again. So after you stuck the first arrow in an enemy, the duration starts, and after that duration is over, it explodes in that explosion. Now, the explosion, damage, and AoE depend on the amount of arrows that you stuck in the time frame. So it's very important to stack as much attack speed as possible, and also the reason why ballistas are so good. You can see right here, explosion deals 6% more damage per explosive arrows on target, and also 3% more damage with ailments. And on top of that, it also gets +2 meters of AoE per arrow stuck in the target. So that means that with ballistas, you can obviously stick a lot more arrows into an enemy. In Endgame, this is just came out of leveling. In Endgame, you will have 6 of these. Important to note, this is an Ignite build, so it doesn't scale with fire penetration, for example. It needs reduced resistances, for example, from elemental weakness or exposure. Also, additional projectiles on the tree do not increase your single target damage. They're only there for comfiness. And while clearing, once you have the gear, I think it's definitely worth doing. And on the tree that I will propose to you, we do actually take both the additional arrows. Very important to note, do not just pick one of them, because then it's kind of going to fork out. It's just weird targeting. If anything, you want 1 projectile or 3 or 5. And most importantly, do not use pierce or chain or fork or anything like that on explosive arrow. You do not need it, and you do not want it, because it will break your damage. Now, fires an arrow which will stick into an enemy or wall and then explode. This only happens on the last enemy that gets hit, because you can imagine how broken this would be if there was like 10 enemies here and I would pierce through all of them and all of them get an explosion and they all overlap. That does not work on this build. And if you have a pierce, what happens is you fire through the boss and you never connect. So you have 0 damage. Now, how much attack speed is too much then? Because after you stick 22 arrows in, the damage is lost. That is the maximum. So you're just waiting for it to run out, but your ballistas are firing for no reason. Straight up, it doesn't really happen, so you shouldn't think about it too much. However, round about maybe 2.8, it is a little bit too crazy. But I can guarantee you that you are not going to get there anytime soon. That is with a Wilma's Requital and decent items, right? Until like day 2, day 3, you don't really have to think about that. And even if you shoot over, there's never an issue with that. Your clear is going to get better and snappier and whatnot, because this is just under perfect circumstances, right? You have all your totems down. They all fire perfectly. None of them is chilled or dies accidentally because it gets hit by an AoE or something, or gets chilled, gets slowed. That just never happens in actual gameplay. So 99% of the time, the answer is get more and more and more attack speed. The only difference is that early on, you want to go faster attack support because you have very low attack speed. Later on, that is a little bit too much of a cost because you really want all the more multipliers you can get. So next up, let's talk about Golems. Elementalist has been completely reworked. We will talk about that. But for now, let's talk Golems. This is the biggest change to Elementalist in as far as I can think. So what they did is they made the Golem node a lot more efficient and powerful. Liege of the Primordial now grants +2 instead of +1 totem, and grants Golems are immune. If you've never played Elementalist before, this was behind it on Elemancer, which is now moved to Liege of the Primordial, which basically opens you up to only have to pick one Ascendancy. You do lose the effect from the second one, but overall, very efficient, very worth. But the biggest thing is Golems got a huge rework. And I don't just mean like a little bit, I mean all of the Golems. And I will just cut it short for you. I will show you a list here. This is what you get at level 34, and I mean character level 34. Not like level 34 of the skill. This is level 1 skill gems on your Golems. Right after you open Deshret's banner, right over here in Act 4 town, you can go over, I think it was Oyun, right? And you'll get one of the Golems, and then you can buy the other Golems for a chance orb, or you can convert your fusings into chances and buy them all. You will have +4 Golems, because you also get this from the passive tree, Golem Commander, and you also get 80% increased effect in total. With this 180% effect, at level 34, you're getting all of these effects. Increased attack and cast speed, so that means everything you cast yourself, everything your totems cast, and also your shield charge speed or whatever you're doing, right? You get 20 mana regenerated per second, which is completely ridiculous. That is base mana, so that is like better than a clarity at that level without reservation. You get 92 life regenerated per second. Usually around that level, you have around about 700 to 900 life, so that's over 10% life regen. 47 chaos resistance, which, I mean, basically unheard of in the campaign. 28 damage over time multiplier, which makes up for a lot of the damage that got lost elsewhere, which we're going to talk about. And then 56% AoE, which, well, I don't have to tell you, it's one of the biggest draws towards Elementalist. And then also increased damage and global defenses. I'm personally going to level with Grace, so also big deal. This is far and away the most efficient and most power level you will get out of any Ascendancy. Obviously, you can argue Adrenaline is going to also make you faster, but it's kind of true for Golems as well, because the attack speed also increases your shield charge speed. The reason these Golems are so strong at level 34 with 180% increased effect, 100% from the Ascendancy, and 80% from the tree in total, the reason is they just made them flat. So a level 1 does the same as level 20. I'm not sure why they did that, but it is what it is. There are a few of them that actually scale. The 20 mana region actually scales to 54 plus. The 92 life regen scales over 300. The dot multi scales quite a bit, and the increased damage as well. Also, do note that I did not factor in any of the buff effect from the quality there. That's another boon. As well as that, rare body armors have increased buff effect of your Golems. This is just a tier 1. It goes, I think, up to 37% or so. Now, will Golems die in endgame though? And the only answer I can give you is, I don't know. However, I've talked to a lot of people who've played Golems in the past, and they say they can be quite sturdy. And don't forget, they are going to be immune to elemental damage. As well as that, there is some changes to Shaper of Flames. You can convert a lot of the physical damage incoming to elemental damage. So a lot of the phys damage is also not going to kill you. If anything, you might end up having to grab some chaos res for them. However, my real answer is, who cares? I'm not going to invest like 20 points or something into this. The reason this Ascendancy is good for me personally on this build is it's 1 Ascendancy point, 3 points, and then possibly like, I mean, the 4 gems, obviously, which I could figure out. We're going to talk about that later. that's it, right? Like the more I invest, the more important they are to my build. And even if they're only up 70% of the time, I mean, this amount of buffs is just absolutely, absolutely ridiculous, right? Once again, this is like unheard of for an Ascendancy. So the more you invest, the more you make yourself a slave of this, the more effect you get. I personally go very minimum investment on golems. They're just a part of the build. Arcane Cloak on Mana Stackers is not bad because it only has 65% of uptime. It is still one of the craziest gems currently in the game. Same with Intimidating Cry on Slammers. You can't tell me that most of these guys have it up all the time with like 2-3 attacks per second. Obviously not. They're still ticked in POB. They're still there. Rotations happen all the time. It depends on the content, right? We'll have to see and you'll have to adjust. None of these, other than maybe the Chaos Resistance, is anything that you're gonna super miss while it's down. So it is what it is. But let's go right into the Ascendancy. Like I said, the Golem nodes are kind of like put together now, so you get +2 on this one, and you get the immunity to elemental damage, as well as that you resummon the golems every 4 seconds, which is why I said it's not as big of a deal if they die. They come back full HP 4 seconds later. There's not just chaos dots all over the screen all the time, right? It is what it is. You're also a ranged build, so stuff's gonna die. Mercenaries are going to buff up your golems, so in general, am I worried? I have no idea. Not really. Then we have some more reworks. First up, Shaper of Flames still has everything other than the 25% more damage. And this one got changed to, if you look right here, 40% of physical damage taken as fire. Now, physical damage was one of the worst things to deal with on this build, so I think this is actually a huge buff, because if you had to use Lightning Coil or Cloak of Flame, most likely that would have costed you way more than just getting 25% more damage. Also note that this is a different wording to Cloak of Flame. This actually converts all incoming damage. It also affects your golems, and your golems are elemental immune, so this 40% basically gets completely eradicated. And there's also some other things like Chaos Binding right here, or Shock Clasp Belt, whatever it's called, that you can put on your Merc or yourself. That will help this quite a bit. Overall, though, I think this is quite a big buff for a build that already had a lot of damage and is just kind of looking for some solutions. Then there's a little bit of competition here between Shaper of Storms, Bastion of Elements. Shaper of Storms got reworked. You can now get like a 30% shock. I still think it's probably worth it to go for Mastermind of Discord and Heart of Destruction. Do note that you do not want to take Mastermind of Discord early. When you first get into maps, I would highly recommend get Bastion of Elements. You're not going to have much HP, so this flat shield will just be absolutely huge. It will double your defenses against elemental damage. And don't forget that Shaper of Flames now has the Fizz converted to LE, which now perfectly synergizes with this node, which is probably why they made it that way. Later, though, once you have exposure from gloves, because we're not going elemental equilibrium anymore, which opens up a lot of new options, pretty hyped about that as well. Once you have the gloves right here with fire exposure and hit applying minus to fire is, you can actually go for this Ascendancy. And then you also want to get Heart of Destruction, most likely, for the 30% more damage rotation. Now, I'm still not 100% sure if I want to scale the shock maybe instead, but that's up to you. I was just thinking Heart of Destruction, 60 AoE plus 60 from the Golem, plus like 20 from the bow AoE should make for some pretty huge Ignite proliferations. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if people change this around. Shaper of Storms, Bastion of Elements, you can kind of decide yourself. There's also a new Herald node, but I don't think you're going to be doing anything with that. But this side is definitely open. Shaper of Flames and Leech of the Primordial are locked in. As for Pantheons, you will start out with Soul of the Brine King, which is quite nice, right? It gives you a little bit of stun immunity from Act 6 onwards. You can also get the immunity to freeze. Now, I don't know exactly where I'm going to get the immunity to freeze yet. You might get Purity of Elements, and then maybe your Merc has either Grace or D-Term, or vice versa, right? Like, you can figure that out. I just simply don't know yet. But I know that you really want to go Soul of Lunaris in Endgame, and that's mainly, it has a lot of good stuff, but it's mainly because avoid projectiles that have chained. If you think about how this is going to look like in maps, enemies are going to chain from your totems on top of you. If you're immune to that, that is absolutely incredible. Especially, this is going to be a good Ascendancy on a lot of builds because you have Mercs following you now around, maybe AGs as well, that will all chain on top of you. For small Pantheons, it's pretty straightforward. If you are doing Searing Exarch, you need to get Soul of Aberoth for the Unaffected by Burning Ground, otherwise you're going to get absolutely slaughtered. Now, Soul of Rizlafa, maybe in like boss fights, is very good, right? Reduced life regen if you really need it, and you also get that life recovery from flasks back, so you can go into a boss fight, just put in 3 or 4 life flasks and call it a day. You can always go Shakira, right? Whatever you want. Maybe if you have bleed problems, Relicash. Then let's talk about the playstyle, probably the most important fact about a totem build, because everything kind of changes. Usually you have to stand still to deal damage. You have to pick your position whenever you can, like your pockets of damage, right? The boss is moving, boom, I'm gonna like attack or whatever. But with ballistas, all of that changes because you put down your ballistas and then you're kind of free to do whatever. So while the build is quite squishy, one of your payoffs of being a totem build is that you're a lot more agile and you're also not a melee build. There is absolutely no reason for you to run into a pack before you place down your totems, or to not place down your totems way before the pack even comes up, right? So if you talk about delay, what you often see is somebody's going to run into a pack and then start placing totems. And like, okay, now I'm standing around. But you can place them ahead of you, right? And even if you don't see enemies, a good playstyle would be place, go, place, go, place, go, place, go. Now, you can only do this if you have a lot of extra totems, because otherwise you're replacing the ones behind you. But you need to understand that they still fire even if they're off screen and if you don't see them anymore. There's no reason to stand still or next to enemies. Standing still is another big mistake. So if you put down your totems and then there is a boss here, for example, or whatever, or even in mapping, there's never a reason to stand still at any point, because you don't need to stand still to do damage. Always run. The projectiles of enemies will not hit you as much. Just don't run into AoEs and you're gonna be fine. Maneuver your way around it. Very big deal here, phasing flasks are your friend. So there is a delay to it, right? So for example, if I press phasing flask right here, boom, I can place this down and be in the middle of the pack and run through everything. There's no unit collision. Now, obviously, you shouldn't do that if you're as squishy as me, or if you don't know what you're doing because you're gonna run into harsh enemies, but 70 to 80% of enemies don't really do any damage and you can just run through them. This comes with a little bit of a price tag, obviously, and with you knowing the game a little bit more, but it will make you way more efficient. You don't have to place down your ballistas and then wait until something blows up. You can just run through them in the meantime easily. Also, big deal, stop picking up trash all the time that is worth nothing. Have a good loot filter. Only show the stuff that's really worth it. This is a big deal because on totem, stuff is going to die behind you, especially during campaign. Later on, you can do mechanics that actually fit you, that are more static, but right now, all you're gonna do is just run through. Stuff dies behind you, you get the XP. If you look at your XP bar, you will always see it going up and up and up, and you will wonder, oh, what just happened there? There's like an XP explosion. It's because no matter where something dies, you get the XP. You don't get the loot, but if you have a good loot filter, you'll hear if something drops. If you miss a rare or two, that doesn't matter. And then once again, do mechanics that your build is actually good at. These are the mechanics in this case. Everything where that's stationary, this build is extremely good at because all the downsides go away. You have ignite proliferations, but everything that's like super time intensive, like for example, legions or breaches, not gonna be as good. If you don't kind of fit the content you run to your build, then you can't be surprised if it doesn't excel at it. Now, while bossing, the same things apply. You should never be standing still. There isn't a single reason why you should ever stand still in this game on a build like this when you just do damage all the time. Replace your ballistas when needed. You're obviously going to plop down your ballistas, and sometimes they are going to die. Now, you will, in mid-game, take these res life notes, which are a big deal, and also the auras from both your mercenary or your animate guardian or your own auras are also going to affect your totems, but they are still going to die. It's going to happen, and that's why we have a ton of placement speed, right? It's extremely efficient to put these down. Plop, move, plop, move. There's also this little mastery right here, which gives you a 30% chance to summon 2 ballistas instead of 1. This becomes a lot more important later once you have 6. Right now I only have 4, but it is very nice if you're clearing and sometimes you're actually putting down 2 and it gives you way better clear. And on bosses, this just makes it way faster to get to your maximum amount of totems. Do not mindlessly replace your totems though. Like, don't just stand there and like do it over and over, because the totems you recast could be in an animation and that will then get canceled and you will put up a new totem and there's always a small delay, so you're actually scuffing your DPS. Never do that. Only do it if necessary. And then don't place all of them on top of each other. This should be, I mean, self-explanatory, but if you put them all in one place, I do it a lot as well, but it is convenient, but it will mean that they will all die at once. If you can kind of spread them out, right? Once again, with like this walk, go, and do not stand on top of any of the totems because they might taunt the enemy and then they're going to jump at the totem. You're not going to see it coming. it's kind of annoying that way. Which, by the way, is also one of the reasons I do not take the Totem Taunt. I've had bad experiences with it. If you like it, go for it. You know it exists. I personally think it's even more confusing. It does help while mapping, but against bosses, it's really annoying. And also, while your totems are doing your work, you have time to do stuff. So for example, your Arcanist brand with your setup, flammability, it basically just casts everything automatically. It's going to attach to the boss or to the rare, and it's going to make the resistances go down significantly. It's like double damage or so. And as well as that, sometimes throw in a frenzy here or there whenever you can, so you keep up your frenzy stacks. They do have a 10-second duration, and it's going to refresh all stacks if you just do it here or there. First, let's talk about items. One of the reasons why this build is so efficient is because the bow and quiver are extremely cheap. This is a tier 5 unique item, and it's low level, so it is never going to cost much. Same for skirmish, also a tier 5 item. Both of these combined will kind of get your early game together. And with early game, I mean up to feared. You can clear everything up to feared with this. Afterwards, obviously, you're gonna have to make upgrades, but that makes the build extremely currency efficient because you can allocate all those resources elsewhere. Stormcloud is just a high attack speed bow, and yes, it is better than Quillrain. We're gonna talk about that later as well. And the attack speed rolls up to 50%. Early on, grab whatever you can, maybe have like a 40-ish roll, whatever costs like 2-3 chaos. I would highly recommend before you are level 55 to get one. You obviously can't do that if you're on SSF. Then just get as much attack speed as you can on a, for example, Grove bow or a short bow. It doesn't really matter. Flat damage is also good, right? But attack speed is by far the most important stat. We're not crit, so don't think about that. And get this as early as possible. I always, when I play EA on trade, every single time I get it at level 55, it's going to be really cheap. Skirmish can be a little bit more expensive. Usually it isn't, but like 3-4 chaos maybe. Try and get a high implicit roll. You can later put on blessed orbs, but the other rolls don't really matter. We're very int heavy on this build, so it doesn't matter. The mana region is like, you're mostly fine. It's just for the +1 number of maximum totems. This will obviously get replaced later, but it's just such a huge boon early in the game because the way we start is on Elementalist, which is very far away from the +1 totem on Watchtowers, and we are going to anoint Surveillance on our amulet. It is also quite cheap, but an Opalescent Oil can go up to like 15 chaos. Another thing I want to point out here is that this has loadouts now. So what that means is if I, for example, click early maps, it will change the passive tree, it will change the skill gems, and it will change the gear to that set. You don't have to do that manually anymore. I swap to red maps, right? All the good stuff. I can even swap to Act 1, and you see there's like not much here. So yeah, that's very helpful. But in terms of other chase items, we have first up Wilma's Requital. This is a tier 3 unique, which means it can get a little bit pricier, 30 to up to 60 chaos. It always depends on how many Ballista builds are being played. What this item does is it converts increases and reductions to cast speed to attack speed instead. This is how it looks like, and it also gives a lot of accuracy and increased ally damage with attacks. Overall, it's just a very strong helmet. It also has Ancestral Bond, and that lets you untick the Ancestral Bond on the tree. So now you can do this, right? You get an extra point. I still left that in the red map section just in case you forget about it or you don't have Wilma's yet. I know this has happened before, but just be mindful whenever you equip the helmet, you get a free point. Now, what this line means is that cast speed, for example, on the passive tree, this one right here, this 4% would turn into attack speed. Very strong in theory, but I mean, we have enough attack speed nodes. However, we also have overlapping things, so it can double dip. Frenzy charges, for example, give 12% attack and cast speed. That will actually give you both the attack speed and then also convert the cast speed. So instead of just 12 attack speed, you're getting 24 with the extra cast speed. This also works for Onslaught, Arcane Surge, Coordination from the passive tree right here. Basically everything where attack speed and cast speed are in a separate line. If it said attack and cast speed, it would probably not work. And then we also have Haste and Val Haste, and we don't really use Haste, but we could get it, for example, from a Merc, and Val Haste you're gonna run regardless for the, I don't know, the button press here or there to get faster. This is in the last pop here in red maps. Until you get to Wilma's, all you want is really a, I don't know, evasion, armor, helmet. Evasion and armor, Grace Determination, right? Just stack both, get kind of to like 20k, as much life as possible, as much armor and evasion as possible, and then fill it out with resistances and stats that you need. Just so you're aware, in my POBs, I put the resistances and some of the stats you need here on the side, so nobody's confused. You can get those resistances on whatever items. You can see I don't have any, like, not really a lot of stats on anything. For the body armor, you're really looking for as much increased effect of buffs granted by your golems as possible, and then either Determ effect or Grace effect as your Eldritch implicits, and then as much spell suppression as you can. On this POB, I am still on lucky spell suppress, which means we're not 100% capped, but that is something you work towards too at the end. You can respec out of this node once you have around about 92, 93 without it, but if you're sitting on like 60, 70, 80, make sure that you have it ticked. Your body armor is going to be your biggest source of flat evasion and armor, so you need to make it count. No energy shield bases, no nothing, as much as you possibly can. Plus, make sure that you do not have a life modifier, because otherwise you cannot use the life mastery. And yes, it is more efficient to take this node and get no life on your body armor than the other way around. If you can't help it for now, then just unspec this node. You really want a rare body armor because it's easier to get links on it. You can buy a body armor like this with like a 5 link for a few chaos, and with a 6 link usually for between 20 and 50 or 60 chaos, depending on how good your base is. But earlier on, it is what it is, right? Whatever you can get your hands on, but it doesn't really change anything. Early on, you're probably not going to get spell suppress, but that is about it. For gloves, what you want is exposure on hit in your Eldritch implicit. That is very important because we do not have elemental equilibrium. Do not take this node right here. Do not take Mastermind of Discord until you have that. Once you have Mastermind of Discord, you can take it. It's a ton of damage. As you can see, 30% more damage. The shock is also 30% more damage, but the Mastermind also gives you extra regen. Plus, if you want to, you can spec out of Bastion and go for more AoE and damage. Very important is attack speed. You can get up to 16%. Otherwise, just craft it on. You can craft up to 12%. Also in the implicit, very good. 112 life, like as much life as you can, as much armor and evasion once again. Make sure that you know you can actually now get fire damage because there's no EE mechanics at all. So there's no like, I don't know, like don't get fire damage anywhere or your build is bricked. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. But if you're an avid EA enjoyer, you will know what that means. You're now free. And before that, as you can see, I'm not really doing all that much with my gloves. Whatever you can get your hands onto, once again, resistances, stats. For boots, most important stat as always is movement speed. Highly recommend getting a 25% though, because 30% are very overpriced. You can probably get a 25 with a decent spell suppression roll and some resistances, life, and whatnot for pretty damn cheap, whereas a 30 would probably run you ×3 or ×4 the money. That's a little trick. Obviously, 5% movement speed loss, but it is what it is. For implicits, you can get buff effect of a single golem. You can keep whatever you want there for the start, but Chaos Golem is really what you want for the extra Chaos res and the dot multi. And on the other side, on the Eldritch, you want the Ignites deal damage faster. Until you get this, movement speed is king. Other than that, life, whatever you can get. Early on, I would highly recommend not getting evasion and armor though, because you need one slot that has evasion because it's going to be easier to get your sockets, because one of your setups will be a 4 link here with 4 blues, and that's going to be nigh impossible on an armor evasion base. So make sure you have either armor energy shield or evasion energy shield. The amulet is one of the most important slots because of the anoint. So you want surveillance as soon as possible. This node is like 30% more damage or so. It gives you an extra totem, which makes it easier to ramp up to more stacks. It gives you attack speed, and it gives you enemies take increased damage. It is one of the biggest upgrades for the least amount of currency you can have. Opalescent oils are usually between 10 and 20 chaos, and the other oils are completely worthless. So get this on an amulet as soon as possible. Even if it's the shitty amulet, it's just such a huge power spike. You just re-enchant it on whatever next amulet later. And other than that, what you're looking for is mostly plus to skill gems or plus to fire skill gems. And then if you can, dot multi, and the rest is just life and resistances. And as you can see right here, early maps, I don't really expect anything. And my anoint is also different because I won't have the money for an opalescent oil, Burning Brutality is a super strong anoint. It gives you attack speed and fire down multi, and the highest oil is a teal, so you're not going to pay more than 1 chaos for this. Ring slots are one of the easiest ways to get your accuracy alongside life, and then you can craft on LE damage with attacks. Every flat damage is also very strong. You don't really need both accuracy. You can see here I'm almost capped. You really want to be at 100%. You can also get accuracy randomly from your helmet or from your gloves. Whatever the case, make sure your precision is actually on, and then you check right here. You go to your EA, hover over right here. I'm only at 98%. The second number is not as important. As long as this is on 100%, you're usually fine. Baseline resistance is very strong. Coral ring for extra life, right? Whatever you can grab. An amethyst ring is quite good, although you do get a lot of chaos res already from a chaos golem. And then we have another chase item. This one is a tier 3 unique, and it costs usually between 30 chaos and the divine, depending on how many Ignite attack builds are being played. This makes your Ignite faster, which, because we're reapplying over and over, is straight up a more multiplier. It's one of the biggest upgrades you can have. It also has life, resistances, strength, everything you want. This is one of the first items you want to get. If you ask me, should you get Wilma's or Daedian Dawn first? Probably still Wilma's, but it's quite close. Before that, you will use a Prism Weave, which is just a ton of damage in early maps. Like, you have almost no flat damage, and it's just like ridiculous. It is a ridiculous belt that gives you everything you want, and it's a level 25 item, and it usually costs between 2 and 3 chaos. As for flasks, 1 life flask, a quartz flask for phasing, jade flask for evasion, granite flask for armor, and quicksilver flask for speed. In endgame, you also want to add some suffixes: more movement speed, increased armor, increased evasion. On the quartz, you probably want reduced effect of curses. Stun avoidance is also fine, but curses are absolutely going to hammer you. And then make sure that on your life flask, you have a bleed immune corrupted blood. Otherwise, you're going to get slaughtered. Let's go over skill gems. So you will start Explosive Arrow after Act 8 when you get your second Ascendancy. So you will take the Golem node first, then you take Shaper of Flames, and then you can go for Explosive Arrow. Everything else we're going to talk about in the leveling section. But yeah, for your endgame, you'll have Explosive Arrow. The quality on Explosive Arrow is not that important. It might seem like it's good, but you're not going to reach max charges anyways, so getting +2 max is completely worthless. So for example, if you have a 20-0, I wouldn't even wait to quality it before you corrupt it, because if you get a 21, that is like a 10-12% damage increase. You can still get a 21-20 later, just saying. Ballista Totem support, make sure this one is always leveled as much. Getting a level 21 Ballista Totem is huge because it increases the life of the totems, so they die less, so you have to replace them less. Faster attacks is here as a fill-in in the early maps, but you definitely want to get rid of it once you have Wilma's, because you'll have enough attack speed and you just want as much damage multipliers as you can. Unfortunately, we can't really put Combustion on anything else, so we're going to put it on our main links until way later when you have Awakened Gems. So Combustion would be your 6th link. It's very strong. If you don't know, there's a lot of things that apply stuff when we ignite, but we don't ignite ourselves. You can't use it with Ancestral Bond because you deal no damage. Same goes for Wave of Conviction, by the way, and why we get our exposure from gloves and not from the gem. So that's basically your setup. Ignite Proliferation, very important because it gives you your clear, also more damage, LE damage with attacks, burning damage, and combustion. And yes, in endgame, you can also go Empower, but we're not going to count that yet. And it's only really good if you have a +4, which is going to be super expensive. As for our golems, I ticked it off in POB right now because I added the effect in the config, which it is what it is, right? When POB gets updated, you can do this yourself if you want to. But yeah, all the golems are here: Chaos, Stone, Flame, and Lightning. The one absent here is the Ice Golem, which would be nice for the accuracy. It would give us over 1,000 accuracy with all the effect, but the crit is kind of useless, and we had to cut one because once again, we only have +4 golems. Always level these up, obviously. If you can get a 21, they get more durable. It's very strong. The quality is super good because it gives you buff effect, which applies to all the bonuses they give you. And yes, later on, you can do stuff like Meat Shield or minion life on top of that, but getting that many blue sockets in the evasion armor gear is quite hard. Then we have our Arcanist brand set up. You just plop this down and then it follows the enemy around. It's basically attached to that enemy, and it casts our curse, which is flammability, and it casts Flame Surge, which basically takes the ignite and puts a burning ground down. This is straight up 25% more damage for the build and incredibly strong. As well as that, a Flame Wall, as you can see right here, this is quite a bit of extra damage on the bottom. I don't know how much it is right now. Let's find out. Okay, this is Oh, I don't even have it on. Oh, wow. I actually have more damage. My bad. But yeah, as you can see, Flame Wall, very good. Grace D-Term. Now, I don't know what mercenaries you're going to have, what mercenaries can roll. If your mercenary has either Grace or Determination, you want to use Purity of Elements on yourself. It will make it easier to res cap, and it also gives you elemental ailment immunity. You don't want Purity of Elements on your mercenary though, because you don't want to be like not res capped if he's not around. These two are a little bit better. Other auras that you can use are Wrath for extra damage, right? Anger for extra damage, or Haste for extra movement speed and attack speed. You want Determination Grace first though. If you get extra from your Merc, that's a nice bonus. Then Precision, you can see that I don't have it fully leveled. This completely depends on your build, how many random mana. Like you usually have some random mana roll somewhere, and this whole equation is going to be different. It has a flat reservation, so it changes with level. So if you have too much reserved and you can't cast your explosive arrows, then there's something wrong, right? You have to level it down and you have to get the rest of your accuracy elsewhere. Then we have Blood Rage, which gives you attack speed, but also frenzy charges on kill. This is how you get frenzy charges during mapping. You don't ever need to really cast your frenzy, but it's also just nice for the attack speed itself. It does trickle you down a little bit, but your Stone Golem gives you so much regen that you will not just feel it. And also, yes, the totems do count as you for killing enemies because it's a dot. If it was a hit-based one, it wouldn't work, but it counts as your kill. Flame Dash. Now, you can use Blink Arrow if you want to, but I feel like if you don't have enough attack speed, it feels kind of ass. You would also have to fill in a Mastery right here. You would have to go Blink Arrow has cooldown recovery rate, and you would lose the AoE, which I'm not personally comfortable with, but do whatever you please. Flame Dash is a spell, so it also gives you Arcane Surge, which is buffed next patch. It actually gives you 20% increased cast speed at any level. So yeah, you can just leave it at 1, and whenever you Flame Dash, you're getting 20% cast speed, which get converted to 20% attack speed. Frenzy is there with Mana Forged Arrows. This is mainly for bosses where you don't kill anything, so you don't get any frenzy charges. This is going to be fire whenever you place down your totems, so that's pretty nice. And then leave those at level 1. And then Molten Shell at the end. You want a cast when damage taken level 1 and a Molten Shell level 7 exactly. And then also make sure that you have the 20 quality. 20 quality is very strong. Then let's talk about the passive tree. As you can see here, we're pretty spread thin between right side here and left side. If you guys know, back in the day, I would path through the middle. That is unfortunately not possible anymore because I have to path here for the Golem cluster. So that is the reason for the change. And once again, make sure that once you have Wilma's Requital, that you actually respec the Ancestral Bond right here. Free point. Now, this is how it's going to look like early. Early on, you're still going to have these left over from leveling. Practical application is going to give you res, strength, dexterity. This is going to give you dex, strength. All of these are only there to help you with early gearing. These are not points that are worth it for you. The first thing you'll do after leveling, when you've kind of filled out this area, is you'll go down here and you'll grab Inveterate and you get Lucky Spell Suppress. This is going to help a lot with early survivability. As well as that, you're going to be starved on accuracy, so you get Acuity with the Accuracy Mastery right here. And then you'll go right down and grab Watchtowers for the extra totem. Other than that, what you're looking for from the passive tree is increased fire damage, increased LE damage with attacks, increased fire damage over time multiplier, increased damage over time multiplier, and then all the life you can basically grab. You also want to grab the Primal Manifestation cluster here. You can respec these attack speed nodes later, but they're extremely efficient early, 6% per point. And once you have Wilma's, you can also respec out of these. The res nodes are super important. If your totems are dying, you probably forgot these. They're still sometimes dying, but I'm just saying if they're dying too often, you get the Reservation Mastery here. This is how you put on all your auras. Other than that, make sure you have enough dexterity. This is especially a problem early. There's a dex node here, a dex node here, and then once you're in the shadow area, 10 dex here, 10 dex there, right? And then you're starting to path in this area and everything's dex. For masteries, grab the Duration Mastery here. It will make it way easier to actually fire enough. So instead of 1 second, you have 1.15 seconds time to stick in all the explosives. And then it also gives you duration of ailments on your Ignite. Mastery here will be chance to summon totems. If you feel like it's too unreliable or you don't want it, it's mainly nice for clear, but you don't need it. You can also grab Taunt if you really want to. Increased damage for each aura. It's just a very efficient node. Nothing much to say here. If your golems are just a little bit off in terms of defensiveness, you can also grab the 30% max life here. Probably is not going to be necessary until later. Make sure you only take the life mastery if your body armor has no life modifiers at all. Otherwise, it's a wasted point. Lucky spell suppress already explained. Accuracy, yeah. And like I said, once you get to red maps and once it's later, you should have these from your gear, and you're going to unspec all of these nodes that you don't need anymore, and you're going to start grabbing additional projectiles. So you get one here and one there. Very important. 2 projectiles sucks because it kind of fans out and it sometimes misses the target. So when you're here and you're like almost taking one of these nodes, you want to set it up like this, or maybe respec another node and then take both at once. Once again, 1, 3, or 5 projectiles, totally fine. 2 or 4, don't save on these life points. Later on, you also want to grab intuition. It is what it is. The build isn't very tanky, but like, don't make it even worse. Also, if you're starved on accuracy, instead of the 20% AoE, you can also grab the accuracy per green socket on equipped bow. Do note that most likely your bow will have mostly green nodes, but if you have blues, you can also stick stuff like this in there. But if you have the mastery, yeah, you can get like 400, 500 accuracy. And yeah, it can straight up replace one of the rolls on your rings. Then let's talk about leveling. There are 3 stages to leveling. The first one is Rolling Magma plus Holy Flame Totem and Flame Wall, like you already know from a lot of these Templars and Witch leveling runs. After that, you're going to respec into Firestorm at level 28 and then up to level 55 when you actually go EA Ballista. From level 1 to 28, your playstyle is going to be exactly like this. You're going to throw Rolling Magmas. This is going to be level 1, right? And then at level 4, you get both Holy Flame Totem and Firewall. So you put down 1 Holy Flame Totem and it's going to attack enemies. And then you also will put down a Flame Wall, and whenever you shoot through that or your totem shoots through that, you get extra damage. This part is not on the loadout, but down here you can see Act 1 to Act 10. There are trees for every single act. So at the start, you start out, all you want is increased damage as much as possible. Fire damage is actually better than spell damage in every scenario because it also scales your ignite. And early on, your ignite will be a big deal. Not so much once you're Firestorm, but we'll get to that. After Act 1, you're gonna go right over and grab Elemental Overload. As well as that, you're going to grab the Fire Mastery right here with Heart of Flame. Do note that at this point, you cannot crit and ignite an enemy. You actually have to ignite them normally, which means you will need, as you can see right here, I also have the gem layouts right here. You will need a combustion in your main skill or wherever, right? Like as much combustions as you possibly can, so you can actually get the Fire Mastery off. The bandit you take is you will help Alira for the 15% all-res. If you already know what you're doing, you can also go movement speed if you really want to, but I would highly recommend it for lazy gearing. Act 3 is going to be simply filling out some of these efficient cast speed nodes. It's just going to make the build feel a lot better. Fill in some strength, dexterity, res, and a little bit of life mana for comfiness. In Act 4, you're going to go over there. You're probably going to need a little bit of dexterity, and you're going to grab Explosive Impact. On top of the Rolling Magma, with the Ellie Prolif and the Combustion, you'll also be going for Holy Flame Totem with Summon Phantasm and Combustion, and later on, you will replace the Summon Phantasm with Faster Casting at level 18. You're going to move around with a Shield Charge supported with Momentum, which you're going to get from Muling a Ranger. If you don't know, it's basically just literally making a Ranger, going to town, putting the momentum and everything you have in your stash, and then you make the character you actually want. You get momentum right from level 1. So otherwise, you can also ask a friend if he can give you one if you want to. Flame Wall with Arcane Surge. Arcane Surge is going to be buffed next patch, like I said. Flame Wall, very strong. Frostblink is going to be Shield Charge, partner in crime. Just in case you're unfamiliar, Shield Charge looks like this, and if you do Frostblink at the right time at the end, there's like you can see there's like a casting animation at the end, but if you Frostblink at the right time like this, you will skip the casting animation and keep running. So whenever that's up, that is a very good way to get from A to B. And your reservation is going to be Herald of Thunder plus Skitterbots. Now, Act 4 is going to be Firestorm. In terms of scaling, nothing really changes. You're still a fire caster at that point, so you're still going to look something like this, right? +1 to fire skills, life, resistances, spell damage, cast speed, whatever you want, but you are now going to be Firestorm, and Firestorm is just an incredible tool early. That plus the golems that you're going to get at level 34 are going to completely juice you out of your mind. The thing here is at level 38, you're getting Unleash. Until then, it might feel kind of like whatever, so I'm actually going to put faster casting in here. You definitely want to use faster casting for feels. You're still going to have that from your Holy Flame Totem from before. and after you're 38, you're just going to replace it for Unleash. Unleash basically casts multiple of your Firestorms at once, then it needs to recover, and you can do it again. So you're just basically going to walk, Firestorm, and so on. This is how Firestorm is going to look like when you first get it, right? You're just going to cast, move. If there's a boss, you're just going to kind of kite around, right? And then once you have Unleash, your playstyle changes a little bit, because now you can see these seals filling up. They fill up to 3, and 3 just means that you get extra Firestorm cast. So if I press once, you can see it raining down, right? And then it recovers. So your playstyle is going to be shoot, and then you can shoot in between if you want to, but it can also just do something else and kind of like... But yeah, you get a ton of burst for clear. Other than Unleash, you also want Combustion and the newly buffed Arcane Surge. And if you should have a 5-link, then you're going to use Fire Penetration. I also did add a Armageddon Brand. If you don't know what that is, Armageddon Brand is just a ton of extra damage. You put it down on an enemy, and then, yeah, you can kind of just let it do their work. You're not going to have any brand scaling, but it's still pretty nice while moving around, right? Mostly, I just don't think I'm going to have the sockets. During the campaign, it was quite annoying. So I just put it here as disabled, but should you have the sockets to support it, definitely do so. As for the rest, I personally chose Grace because now we have Golems, which give us increased global defenses. This is going to make it feel really smooth. But if you get Haste, or you already get Grace from one of your mercenaries, or you get Determination, that is also totally fine. And yeah, the 4 Golems you're going to choose are Chaos, Lightning, Flame, and Stone. The way you get these is very simple. We're in Act 4 right now. You're going to do the quest where you have to open the thingy here, and after that you can go up and grab your reward. Most people never do that until they're on their way to the next act, but it's going to be Oyun, and right here she's going to give you a golem as a reward, and then the rest of them you can buy at the vendor. You can see them all, and they cost 1 chance orb per, and do not forget that you can also buy chance orbs from the vendor for 1 fusing, so you need in total 3 between chance orbs and fusings. If you don't have 3 yet, I would personally recommend cutting the Chaos Golem. It's nice to have a little bit of Chaos res, but the dot multi doesn't really do much because our Ignite is pretty much negligible at this point. Do note that your socket pressure will go up because we're adding these 4 gems, but they don't have to be linked. They can be literally in any setup and just fill in the holes. Okay, so this is now Firestorm tree. Nothing changes. You don't have to respec anything. You path now over to Golem Commander because at level 34, you're getting all your golems. This is already level 40, obviously. So this over here is going to be after that. Act 5 right here. Now you're going to path through some life, which is going to be good. And then you start working on these aura nodes. If you can't reserve all of your auras, that is understandable. Just wait until you have all these nodes. There it is. Also take the increased damage. And then in Act 7, we are going to now prepare for the respec. So you're going to connect all the way over here, and then we're going to basically make it so we can respec all this spell damage that's going to do nothing for our attack-based build later. At around level 30, you're going to do the library quest. This is basically where you get gems that you usually can't get on your character early, and you're going to buy the following: Explosive Arrow, Fast Attacks, Ballista Totem, Grace, Haste, and Blood Rage. These are 6 sockets that you're going to put in your offhand so that you can level them, right? So you're going to have 6 sockets here in total. Just put them in there so they get XP from you killing monsters, and make sure that you have enough dexterity so you can actually level them, because there's a dexterity note here. You should be getting 20 dexterity there, and if you have to, also take Alacrity. You can also take a Jade Amulet as your base. You get a rare one from Diala from one of the quests, and you can also craft on early dexterity on basically anywhere for 1 Orb of Augment. It is incredibly important you level these because Ballista Totems scale their life with levels. Explosive Arrow does no damage at level 1 compared to level 14. We're talking like a 100th of the damage, so you cannot do that. Make sure that your Explosive Arrow is high level. If you're doing no damage, you screwed up. That is all. So that's important. Ballista Totem will die immediately if you put on a low level 1. If you forgot this and you have to add it later, then you're not going to be able to play it until maps or so, or you're going to have to farm XP or whatever, but that's why it's here. Library is around about level 30. Faster attacks, you want anyways, because you want to put in your shield charge as well before. So if you are still Firestorm, which is around about where you're going to get the library, you want to use faster attacks alongside your shield charge, so it's already going to be leveled, so you don't really need to put this in your offhand, right? Ballista Totem, Grace, and Haste. You're not going to use Haste for that much, although if your mercenary has Determination, you can use Haste yourself, but it's going to be very nice for campaign, and Grace is just super good. These also scale drastically with levels, and then as well as that Blood Rage. This is Ciosa once again, so this is where you buy all your stuff from. Just make sure you have the currency actually in your inventory, otherwise you can't buy it. You can also buy a Flame Surge, I think you can buy anyways, but might as well buy it from him. And a Frenzy, these you do not need to be leveled, so you don't need to put them in your offhand, just store them somewhere for now or buy them later. And at level 38, you're gonna get, at the end of Act 4 roundabout, you're gonna get a quest reward that is Ignite Proliferation. Now, this is going to require 2 greens, 1 red, 1 blue. You should have one of those by now. You should have picked up some 4 links, right? If you do not, you have to delay it. But at level 55, I would be very, very surprised. You can also try in a evasion-based, I don't know, if you have a 4 link and it's evasion based, you can probably hit those with chromatic orbs. Explosive Arrow, Ballista Totem, Fast Attacks, Ignite Proliferation. None of these are negotiable. Here, none of these golems at this point are negotiable. Chaos Golem has to be in there at this point. It gives you dot multi as well as Chaos Res. It is like 30% more damage at that point. Your setup here stays the same, just that you now have Flame Surge in your Arcanist brand alongside Flammability. Super important. You always put these down at bosses. For your auras, you have Grace and Haste. Should this reserve too much with the Precision, you can also unreserve the Haste. You're going to be a little bit slower, or unreserve the Grace, or just not level up the Precision all that much. Blood Rage gives you Frenzy charges on kill, which count for your totems because you're a dot-based build. Flame Dash, just to move around. Later, you're going to add Arcane Surge. Don't bother around with that. And then you can put Frenzy at Mana Forged. If you don't have Mana Forged, you can also just cast it yourself. Okay, so as for the tree, what is happening here? So this is where you left off with Firestorm, right? You have all this caster stuff, cast speed over there, all the spell damage, but now you connect it from the right side. And in Act 8, the respec is going to do the following. You're going to respec all these spell damage nodes, all the cast speed over there, and you are going to go into dot multi. So you're going to grab Holy Fire, you're going to grab Acrimony, you're going to get that damage over time multiplier, Primal Manifestation. This Mastery you can either take or not take, whatever you feel like, and definitely take Ancestral Bond. Other than that, you're now connecting from the right side here. You're still taking Heart and Soul and Practical Application, and you're going to do for a while. But yeah, that's basically the gist. The way you respec is either in King's March with Faustus, but I've also heard that you can now respec in every town, so just go to the guys. It is called Respecialization, and you're going to use some of your gold to respec stuff, right? So you can now, yeah, do the respec that I just talked about. You can see right here, this is exactly what I did on this character. And otherwise, you're also going to have some refund points from random quests, and maybe you have some quests outstanding that still give you refund points as well. Before respecking, you need 2 things. The first one is a Storm Cloud, which is extremely, extremely cheap. If you're an SSF, like I said, as much flat damage elemental as possible and as much attack speed as you can on a very fast base, right? So look up there. For example, here it says 1.86. The higher, the better. You're not going to reach that, but the higher, the better. And your quiver, if you can get a 2-point arrow quiver with global accuracy rating on top, that's very good. Otherwise, damage with bows, life resistances, you probably don't have the money for a skirmish. I usually do, but it can cost like 3-4 chaos, so don't worry about that. And Prism Weave, you can also just get later whenever you have the chaos for it, but it's going to be a crazy, crazy damage increase early. As well as that, make use of the black market so you can actually buy stuff. If you need a wand and you don't have a lot of damage, right, you can just gamble for them with gold. If you have, I don't know, any sort of need, you can gamble for it here. They often have links as well, so if you're bleeding for a 4 link, that can be nice. Let's say, for example, you need 2 green, 1 blue, 1 red. You're probably going to buy in Evasion Body Armor because it has more affinity for green. Just make sure that you don't spend too much, because otherwise you won't be able to do the respec and then you're kind of screwed. I want you to listen closely here at the end, because there's 5 mistakes you can make that are quite easy to make, quote unquote, that will completely derail your build. The first one is your golems are despawning while you're changing around gear. So your golems are resummoning every 4 seconds if they die. But if they get unsummoned because you changed gear, for example, you can see the icons up here. This is the lightning golem, this is the stone golem, and so on, right? You should have 4 buffs up there. If you're like, oh, I'm going to replace my gloves, and then you put some other back on, they're gone because they're not being killed. They were being replaced. The gem doesn't exist anymore on your character. So you have to resummon them. This happened to me a few times, and it's something you'll have to get used to. Once again, you will never have to replace them if they die. They always come back. But if this happens, just be aware of it, and it's going to be the difference between your character feeling awful and godlike. Number 2, do not use Pierce, Chain, or Fork. Important. Biggest mistake here is you find a random quiver during leveling and you're like, oh, this has nice res and life and damage with bows. And it has arrows pierce and your build is bricked. Only the last enemy you stick your arrow in actually gets the arrow. So against bosses, it's gonna fly right through and you're gonna do 0 damage. If that is the case, that is why, just so you know. Same goes for all of these. Now you're not gonna accidentally press pierce, I'm assuming, over here, but the quiver is probably the biggest one. So get this in there. Never use this quiver base type. After that, do not use Quill Rain. A lot of people are propagating this. Do not use it. It's bait. It is 30% less damage. Now you might look at it and you're like, oh, 3 attacks per second. That's gonna fix all my issues. Well, 30% less damage is pretty bad, okay? It's very, very, very bad. Now, if you are, I don't know, I can see no scenario, I'm gonna be honest. Stormcloud is extremely cheap, usually even cheaper than Quill Rain, and it does the same thing but better and doesn't have 30% less damage. Number 4 mistake is probably your playstyle. If you don't like the build, I get it. Some people don't like the totem playstyle, but there's a big chance you're actually like weird about it, right? Like, so watch that section and maybe you can learn something from it. Another big one is not using triple Life Flask on bosses. One of the problems will be sustain. You do have a little bit of regen from the Stone Golem, so I'm assuming it's gonna be better this league, but you can actually grab, I don't know, as much as 4 Life Flasks, right? Just remove your Granite, your Jade, whatever. Don't remove your Quicksilver ever, because it's nice to have bursts against bosses. But what you can do is you fill up all Life Flasks and then you go for Soul Lava. So while your flasks are out, you actually recharge them again. So in like epic boss fights, right, your flasks are gonna run out and never come back. If there are no ads, your Jade Flask, you can press it twice and then it's over. If the fight takes like 2 to 4 minutes, that is completely worthless, whereas a reactive Life Flask is not. But yeah, right now I'm still deciding what to play, and EA is quite high up on my list. Hope you guys enjoyed the video regardless. Maxroll guide is going to be up in the next 1 or 2 days, or whenever you read it, I'm gonna update the post in the description and also the top comment. Personally, I'm very hyped about how this kind of EA is going to pan out. Once again, this is a Leaguestarter. You can kind of transition it into an endgame bosser, but it is not a great endgame mapper up to tier 16s, right? Even probably some of the harder content from the new expansion. But once again, I can't test the new stuff, so go in expecting whatever. Golems are going to be fun. They might need some help with survivability. If I end up playing the build, I'm obviously going to do updates over the first week. And if you are interested in some more endgame stuff, I'm also going to put that over on Maxroll. With that said, though, hope you guys have a great league start. Maybe you learned a thing or two from the video. And yeah, I'm going to be streaming over on twitch.tv/Palsteron, so definitely check that out. And league start alongside me. Even if I play something else, just have a place to hang out with like-minded people. And yeah, other than that, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.